Hey, I'm NichBoy, and welcome to Pocket. Now, you all know how much I love, objectively, the greatest video game of all time, Hearthstone. Today, I was lucky enough to sit down with someone from it, the man in charge, Brode. I'm joined by lead designer for Hearthstone, Brode.
Good morning!
Benny Brode. Benjamin Brode. May I call you Benjamin?
Sure.
Does anyone call you Benjamin?
Nobody calls me Benjamin.
Benjamin. You're about to release the next big adventure for Hearthstone.
Yeah.
One Night in Karazhan. How do you balance these adventures and these expansions when they come out?
Well, it is difficult because there's hundreds of cards. There are way more players than there are balance designers on Hearthstone.
Yeah.
So it's tough to know what's going to happen after we release the cards. But we do a lot of testing, and we often test the limits of what is possible. We'll make the fastest rush deck, or the greediest control deck, or try different mana curves of your cards.
Yeah.
And we'll try and get a good picture of what we think is going to be the fastest rush deck and the slowest control deck.
Yeah.
And once we kind of know those things, it helps us set some limits around what we think is going to be possible. But we also have incredibly high-level legend players on the balance team who are really fantastic at building unique, cool, different decks and trying to break the game before it goes live. Try to catch as many things as we can before we publish it. We have made mistakes in the past and had to nerf cards.
Yes.
But
I mean, that's the interesting thing, right? That you've nerfed some cards, but statistically, for a competitive game, the amount of nerfs you have is crazy low. This isn't like a MOBA where you can just change like 1% of a character's, attack rate or something, and it's okay. Like, to nerf a thing is a big deal.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's how we think of it too, because some people feel like we should be nerfing cards more, but actually sometimes when we nerf cards, it's pretty disruptive. When we see people, even when we do a lot of messaging around a card change, they don't even realize that we've changed the card, and they go to do their combo and it doesn't work. And it's surprising. It's not just we've changed that card. We might have nerfed your entire deck. We might make your deck not even function in the same way that you wanted it to function. And so it can be massively disruptive.
And because you're looking at people as well who aren't just making multiple decks and trying everything and adjusting with the meta, there would be so many people out there who are like, I just have a Zoo deck, and that's the deck I play. And so if you change one thing in that, then like their deck is just wrecked.
It's still the right thing to do to nerf cards sometimes when it really distorts the meta. Another important thing, I think, when you're playing Hearthstone is that you feel power and control over your deck and the metagame, and that you can make decisions that you feel like are good against what other people are playing.
I rarely do. I always feel like I'm completely out of control and the other person is just like stomping over me.
But if we're changing cards weekly, that control feels like it's on us.
Totally.
We're gonna fix the meta constantly, and we'll make it balanced, as opposed to you having to come up with a creative solution for what other people are playing on the ladder.
And so you mentioned that you've got some high-level legend players testing the game. Do you also have some high-level sort of like salty assholes like Crip, like on the team who are just like ready to just abuse you when like you release Firelands
We
Portal?
do, yeah.
You got that argument ready to go.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, traditionally Blizzard is releasing things really slowly, and that's something that's changed massively over the last few years. Something that's been talked about heaps is arena balance and how I mean, I don't play a huge amount of arena, I mainly play standard now, but I know that when you go into arena, things can feel as though they're out of balance. You've said that this is something you're looking at, but Blizzard has this sort of do it when it's right, release it when it's ready mentality. How are you finding that in terms of people going, I want change now because I'm so used to having this quick reactionary stuff, to you going, I know we're working on it, but I'm not going to tell you anything until we're actually ready to go?
Yeah, it is tough because I think Hearthstone is going to get better and better over time. We have things that we want to do that are on a massive backlog for us, and I think actually the pace of development is pretty fast for us. But I think it's surprising how many steps there are and how often we go back to the drawing board on things and make sure that they're done to our level of quality. And even then, sometimes we ship stuff that we're like, let's take some time to go back and revisit that in the next patch.
What would be something?
For example, the standard and wild formats that we released, we actually felt like because we needed to get that out as soon as possible because it had to match with Whispers of the Old Gods, there was a couple things that I felt like could have gone a little bit better with the flow that were pretty confusing in hindsight. A lot of players don't have to deal with this, but the moment that a new player unlocks the wild format, I think is not great right now. It doesn't really...
As in, for the player, they don't really understand what's going on?
Yeah, I think it's like a dialogue box that pops up, like, in a weird time that doesn't really explain the whole thing. It's not a great flow. It's certainly not as polished a flow as we tried to get with the rotation for most players, which is the huge clock and the Kraken symbol and
It felt like it was really rewarding for me. But if it's new and it's just like go wild for like this new player, it's like, what am I supposed to do now?
But we do have a big list of things we want to do. We're trying to burn through them as quick as possible. At the same time, we're trying to keep awesome content coming out. That's the lifeblood of the game. That's what keeps the game fresh and exciting and awesome every few months.
And people just, everything you say is under scrutiny. You mentioned the word priest deck, and the internet went nuts thinking that you were holding back on some like amazing priest deck that existed.
Yeah. Well, I think that was maybe a poor choice of phrasing on my part.
Yeah, you gotta watch that. And now this whole Gone Wild thing's gonna go viral, so like, this is just...
That was you!
And so, like you're saying with the balance and like looking at how new players are coming in, I don't know how much you can tell me, but what kind of stats are you tracking behind the scene? Like what do you know, broadly speaking, about how we play?
A lot. We're actually tracking every card played by every player.
So everything, you're watching everything.
Yeah. And so we watch balance at the very highest levels. We can look at a single player and say, okay, why is this player achieving 20% higher win rates with this deck than everybody else? What is he doing differently? What is specifically different about his deck than this other person's deck? What are the best decks? What are the best decks at Legend? What are the best decks at rank 5? What are the best decks at rank 20? And those are different answers a lot of the time. So it's interesting for us to think about balance kind of across the whole spectrum. But we don't just look at data. We also talk to players. I mean, we're obviously very active in the community and reading lots of threads on Reddit and our forums and things like that. And that gives us a whole picture of what the meta really looks like.
And how do you feel now about the meta, but also about how I feel like there's kind of a bit of a trickle-down effect from the pro scene. So you have pros, you have top streamers and these guys, and they're making these decks that are all really interesting, and then that trickles down to everybody else. And a lot of people want to take the best deck and use it on ladder, and I know that's something like I do. But I think you've gone on record as saying that like Blizzard kind of like control decks because it's a bit of a longer, more varied game. It's not just sort of that rush, fast, hit you by turn 6 sort of thing.
I actually think all the different types of decks, for the most part, are pretty healthy for the game.
You could say that Aggro Shaman is a bad deck. It's okay.
I think it does keep some things in check.
Yeah.
We've seen metas a long time ago that were very control heavy, and these are the kind of decks that were playing 2 copies of Mind Control, all the highest mana cost cards, and those decks you spend the first 10 or so turns hero powering.
Yes.
Right, and the games last much longer.
The tension there is unbelievable. It's just like someone playing one card is like, oh my god, oh, they're playing Hearthstone.
Yeah, and I think that when the meta skews that way, then a very fast deck can take advantage of those decks because they can kill them before they even get to play a lot of their cards. And those decks are not playing AoE because the decks you're playing against are mostly control decks. You don't need to play a bunch of AoE spells.
Yeah.
So as decks become stronger or worse, as Aggro Shaman or whatever, face decks become more powerful, other decks can take advantage of their weaknesses. And then those decks become a little bit less popular, and the decks that are good against these decks become more popular.
Yeah. And so during development, you're working on this balance stuff all the time. What card changed the most during development? Like, you must be going through so many variations of things. What's something that sort of sticks out as being...
a lot of the cards change. What's of note is when a card doesn't change, actually. Because, when we design a card, there's either a number changes, that's common, but actually even more common is the whole card just totally changes. So almost every single card you see in the set has changed once, twice, 3 times, 4 times before we finally ship it.
So what's been a perfect card then? One that just came out and you're like, yes.
It's so rare. I think there was maybe 2 in League of Explorers out of the 45 cards that didn't change at all. And I think it's probably less for something like Wishes of the Old Gods or One Night in Karazhan. It's just uncommon. Usually the goal of initial design, the first pass of a design, is to try out some crazy stuff. Is this gonna work? I don't know. It sounds nuts, but let's give it a shot. And then we try it, and often it doesn't work. Or we're like, okay, that's fantastic. Let's save that for a future set, though, because I think this set really needs something like this.
Yeah.
And then it goes through the process to final design, where they do lots of numbers tweaks, lots of kind of vetting of, is this actually fun, or do we need to go another direction? But yeah, almost every card changes dramatically.
And so, moving on then to One Night in Karazhan, you say that you might want to save stuff for later expansions. Is that something that you're sort of actively thinking of as you release this stuff, that you go, you know, right now I'm seeing some great Hunter cards and Paladin cards in Karazhan, which is amazing because they're two of my favorite classes, and I go, oh, I'm happy to see Hunter back in the sun a little bit because we've had Warrior, we've had Shaman, it's time for that bad boy to come back.
We definitely think about what the current meta is doing when we're designing cards for the next adventure. One thing that we try not to do often is release powerful cards that slot right into decks that are already very powerful.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to cause the meta to shift as much.
Yeah.
It is tricky to in an adventure, I think, to cause massive shift. I think League of Explorers was kind of an anomaly.
Totally, because you got like Bran, Reno,
Yeah.
Finlay, you got these great cards coming out that I'm gonna miss Reno decks when they leave.
Yeah.
It's a disaster. Can you do something
I think
about it?
Wild's going to honestly get a lot more fun that second that happens.
Yeah.
There's so many unique decks that are going to be playable only in Wild.
Yeah, totally.
I think Standard's going to be awesome too.
God.
Both formats are going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah. In this new adventure, can you just briefly talk me through the process of coming up with, let's say, an adventure like from go to woe? Like,
Sure, yeah. So it starts with all of the team actually getting in a room together and just shouting ideas out. And they just come up with flavor pitches mostly, like Karazhan is an example. And sometimes ridiculous pitches like Warcraft babies or something, you know. And
it's not a ridiculous idea at all. I feel like you've had you know, BlackRock and Nax and these sort of serious things. League of Explorers is like, oh, Indiana Jones, we've gone disco. Babies is not far away. Like babies feels like the next evolution.
Lich King versus Battle Pets stuff.
Please.
And so that all goes up on a whiteboard, and then also we write mechanical pitches up on a whiteboard.
Yeah.
So things like interacting with your hero power in some way, like for the grand tournament. And sometimes we'll mix and match. We're like, look, hero powers and
Babies.
the Argent tournament is like a great match. So it's all about heroes and champions.
Yeah.
Let's put those together and make a set about it. And sometimes we just pick something on the mechanical side. Sometimes we pick something just on the flavor side and come up with mechanics to help support that theme. But then we've got a theme, and we shop it around to a bunch of different folks in the team and try and refine it. What if we try this? What if what if instead of Karazhan, it's, you know, a magical tower with enchanted items, and it feels like you're exploring a magnificent, marvelous, wondrous place as opposed to a dead tower.
Yeah, because Karazhan was kind of like spooky,
Yeah.
and this is more sort of, you know, whimsical.
Yeah, this is the Hearthstone slant on
exactly,
Karazhan. Yeah, actually, we weren't going to make Karazhan because we felt like there's a lot of other teams at Blizzard's exploring Karazhan. The movie, we felt like, can we really stand out in all this Karazhaning that's going on? Are we confusing the issue by having another Karazhan simultaneous to this? And once we had that slant on it, exploring Karazhan before all that stuff happens, we felt like that was different enough and exciting enough that we're like, okay, it's time. We've been considering doing Karazhan since before Naxxramas.
Yeah.
And this felt like exactly the right time to do it.
Does this become canon now? Like in Warcraft,
I don't
is
know.
the reason that Karazhan is like so creepy and spooky is just because like Medivh got hammered one night?
I mean,
and had this nuts party.
obviously, there's a banquet hall in Karazhan. There's an opera house in Karazhan. There's people dancing in the halls.
I'm not hearing a no.
There was parties there.
Yeah.
Right? That's obvious from doing the raid in World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
This is just us wondering what those parties might have been like.
Yeah, right. And then you've also, I mean, the Blizzard trailers have always been amazing, but you wrote a disco song for this one. And,
Yeah, James McCoy.
and the shocking part is it's a good disco song. Like it's a legit.
It is amazing.
Anything goes for one night in Karazhan.
Look, we were in the meeting with our incredible animation team. We were pitching ideas for this magical tower, full of wonder, and we said, okay, look, we don't always want to do a song, but we end up doing a song.
Yeah.
And if we did, what would it be?
Just hypothetically, guys.
Right. And somebody pitched. I can't remember who it was. Somebody pitched. Maybe a funky disco song, and started pitching ideas, and the whole team was just like, oh man, this is it.
Yeah.
And Metzen was in the meeting, and he says, guys, I'm so proud of us. I'm so happy we can do this. Yeah, and it felt great.
That's what I love as well, because I like when we didn't know what the expansion was. I'm sitting there watching the live stream, and it starts, and I'm going, oh, That's sort of like a funky announcer voice at the beginning of this trailer. There's a lot of pink around here. And then it starts, and I'm sitting there going, yes! But then I instantly look at the chat because I'm like, Twitch chat is not gonna appreciate disco. And they loved it.
Oh,
there's something about the way that like that came out where I went, I don't know how sort of like hot disco is gonna go down with a bunch of 15-year-old boys. But I think you sort of slipped it through.
Yeah, it was, we were, after we had this idea, the animation team went back. James McCoy was the director at the start of the process, and he wrote this awesome song.
Yeah.
And so they do an animatic where they kind of sketch out each scene, and the Hearthstone team comes over to the cinematics building, and we all sit in a big room together and watch the animatic, and we just lost it. And Metzen says, "All right, gut check. Can we do this?
Can we do this? Is this who we are now?"
Yeah. And everybody was like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is it. This is fantastic."
I'm so proud. I'm so happy. Now, I'm super excited for the expansion, but I know as well that you might be running out of ideas. Because you mentioned babies is coming. And so
that's one of like 300 ideas on this board.
Yeah, but babies has a big circle around it. So I wanted to just like really quickly pitch something, just as an idea.
Please, yeah.
Okay, so I want to let you know the setup for this is when I game, if I'm holding a controller, sometimes I get a little stressed out. My hands can get a little damp.
Okay.
Do you
yeah.
experience this?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
Ben Brode's a dampy. He knows what I'm talking about. So my expansion idea, one damp
wow.
day. Yeah, we went all out, my friend. The expansion idea is one damp day.
Okay.
It stars basically everyone who makes Pocket. So the first one, we've got Baby Sam, the production coordinator, over there. Big fan. He's very
Greetings.
excited about this. Baby Sam is a paladin card.
Okay.
He is so adorable, enemies won't attack him directly because they don't want to hit a baby.
This would go great in our baby set.
This would go great in your baby set. Can you legally accept this since like you talked about potentially doing a baby set?
Yeah.
4 mana 2/2, unhittable by enemies
Yeah,
because he's a baby.
this is impeccably balanced.
This is a great card.
Yeah.
Because I figure you could still hero power against. Oh no, enemies. You can, I don't know. You can like cast a spell and get some splash damage.
especially
on it.
like it's clear that they can
Yeah.
attack him, but they won't.
But they won't.
Yeah.
Like morally.
Yeah.
Our second card is a warrior card. Now you haven't met our editor John. John's a big guy.
Okay.
Shaved head, looks like a serial killer.
Okay.
He's actually a total sweetheart inside, but on the outside, total murderer. So John, ladies and gentlemen, new keyword intimidate. All enemy minions wet themselves, slip and slide into new positions.
That's great.
I realized when I did it, it's more of a battle cry because intimidate implies that like the keyword, like I need to figure out what intimidate the keyword does.
Well, it could be some other trigger. It could be both at the start and end of the turn.
That's good.
Or
Just
something.
urine everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just gonna say, fit in with the babies thing. So you can have that one. Our next one.
Good. This is fantastic. John,
Pete.
ladies and gentlemen.
John, ladies and gentlemen. Pete, the producer.
Yeah.
Pete is the only one on the team who doesn't play Hearthstone.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. And I thought I'd call him out.
Yeah.
It's not that he doesn't like it. He has other things that he needs to focus on.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like other crappy games. And he gets really annoyed every time we talk about Hearthstone so much. So Pete's a priest card, so
Okay.
he'll never get played. It's a 0 mana 0/1. Apathetic Pete, when you draw this card, discard this card.
I think that's actually quite strong.
Isn't that a great card? Because it works
That's
with like
the strongest of the cards.
it works
you can
like with like hey, Baby Sam sitting right there. Because it works with like draw decks and stuff. Like you can force that into your opponent's hand when you're trying to go
play.
fatigue or something.
It's essentially a 29 card deck. At this point.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Which is upside, right? Because then you're more likely to draw your super good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Card.
It doesn't count.
Yeah.
Much like Pete. Our second last card. So this is me.
Okay.
It's a legendary
Yep.
spell which you haven't done
Oh
before.
wow.
Yeah.
It's got like 9.
It's gold.
Oh wow.
It can only come in gold. It's a 1-cost spell.
Oh wow.
It's got a new keyword, Head Start. So Head Start, now think about this. Head Start, it has to be in your opening hand.
Okay.
It cannot be mulliganed out.
Okay.
So when you start the game, you get this card straight
Okay.
away. Head Start, Discard both decks, deal 30 damage to enemy hero, achieve rank 1 legend EU server.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I mean, I think I would play it.
You think so?
Yeah.
I feel like it's a little worse than Firelands Portal. Remember how I opened by saying that I wouldn't make you justify cards? Our final one.
These are great. Yeah, if you want a job, you can.
I will take that job because I 100% did all of this by myself. Shut up, Sam. Our final card, because I know that you don't know who this show. You don't know any of us. We're just this bunch of Australian people you've never heard of. So there's going to be a little more incentive for you to put this in the game.
Okay.
So
right.
we made one for you.
Oh, okay. All right.
You're a legendary neutral, so you're good.
Okay.
Everyone can use you. 6 mana,
All right.
2 attack, 2 health. The Booming Brode. Battle cry, laugh so loud your opponent disconnects. Return this card to your hand if your opponent reconnects.
That's good.
I feel like, again, super balanced.
Yeah, this is that kind of design that inspires players. They were like, oh my gosh, you can do anything in this game.
Totally.
Yeah,
totally.
it's like Nosdormu level breaking the rules.
Absolutely.
You gotta have some cards like this.
Yeah, and I feel like your programmers are up to the task of like programming in DDoS stacks on other players'
Yeah,
computers
absolutely. Yeah,
from like my computer.
I'm not super familiar, but our engineers are really talented. I'll just ask them if they can make this happen.
I totally have faith.
I'm sure they can do it.
So One Night in Karazhan is coming out
Starting August 11th.
August 11th.
Yeah.
There you go. And One Damp Day is coming out.
It's gonna take us a while.
Yeah,
to get all this
obviously.
done. We'll have to leave. We'll have to keep you informed.
Because you got to make like another 45 of those.
Yeah.
And there's only 4 people on this team. So that's like...
Yeah, well, we can do some iterations on these, and we'll get back to you.
Thank you very much, Ben, for coming in. This has been great.
It's been awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, dude. My hands are freezing.
And damn.
And damn.